Hello, my name is Robert Barrera, and I'll be interviewing Humberto Ramos. He's the account manager of the ad experience. Let's begin. So, Humberto, have you had any ethical or legal situations happen to you while you're working?
So far, not so many. Most of our clients have pretty much free range of advertising or however they want to do their advertising or PR. But there was one instance where we came into question with Harley Davidson, who we have a Harley Davidson dealership who is our client. They have a very strict MAP policy, which is what they call it, marketing and publication ruling. So they're very strict with it. They only let us use whatever ads they send us. They don't let us really use anything local. So one time, one of the salespeople was trying to run an advertisement with some of the items that were on sale at the time. And we almost got in trouble with them because Harley Davidson does not allow for the word sale to be used during any advertising campaigns or whatever. So they also don't allow for us to use the word percentage off. So like we have a clearance event, we can't say, oh, so-and-so jackets are 50% off. They don't allow for us to do that. So we also can't say sale, percentage off, or any kind of pricing. So we almost got a $10,000 fine from Harley Davidson because of a salesperson that wanted to run an advertisement through our Facebook page. So from that moment on, we stopped having sales people in our Facebook pages. So I think that's probably like a very important instance that a lot of businesses don't realize that they need to follow.
Okay, have you ever found yourself in a situation where when you release certain information, it was a danger to the individuals in the public?
There was one instance as well. Since I work mainly with Harley Davidson, they're pretty much our biggest account at the ad experience. A lot of the motorcycle clubs have police officers or just any kind of law enforcement officials working either undercover or in the motorcycle club in general. One time we did have a luncheon for a bunch of motorcycle clubs. There's about 3 clubs there. And as of course, as everybody refers to motorcycles and motorcycle enthusiasts as kind of like rough on the edges and hard people to talk to, but they're really not. They're some of the nicest people around, just like different motorcycle clubs are. And there was an incident in Dallas, the shootout a couple of months ago that a lot of people still remember. But this luncheon was last year, and what happened was I took a bunch of pictures of people around the dealership just hanging out, and there was a group of people that looked at me and they were staring at me and they were very skeptical about being around the camera. So then they approached me and they asked if they could see my pictures, and then I asked them why, and then they kind of didn't want to tell me why. So then I just let them know, if there's any pictures that you all need me to delete, I'm more than happy to delete them for you. I don't want to have pictures that you don't want me to have. So then they went ahead and didn't just look through the pictures, and they only deleted 3 pictures that they saw themselves in, and they let me know we're on undercover assignment, we're police officers, so we could just appreciate, if we don't refer to us, if you see us in any of their pictures, that you could just delete us. Of course, I don't want to get anybody in trouble or pretty much, in a dangerous situation from their undercover assignment. So I just went ahead and deleted like the pictures that I had taken of that group, and I didn't follow them around with my camera just to make sure that they felt secure, and they didn't feel like they needed to, address that they needed the pictures to be deleted. And another thing, I also work for a piano store, and a lot of the kids have recitals because it's also a music academy. So some of the parents happen to, have divorced the other parent. So a lot of the times they'll come up to me and they'll be like, can you please just delete the pictures of my kids? I don't want them online. I don't want their so-and-so to see it, etc., etc., etc. So it's kind of like a touchy subject with some of the parents. But no issues were really coming up after that. Most of the parents were easy to talk to. Yeah.
Okay, so in your line of business, how do you guys ensure that your work remains legal and ethical?
As I mentioned earlier, Harley Davidson, for example, they have a very strict MAP policy and advertisement policy. So we really follow that to the T. We have to make sure that everything we advertise follows their rules, because a lot of the bigger brands have a certain way of promoting themselves. So there's like car dealerships, for example, they're known to make wacky local commercials. So a lot of brands, especially Chevrolet and Ford, they allow dealerships to make their own commercials, etc., etc. But there are also other brands like Volkswagen, for example, that have a very strict advertising policy. So anytime that we're representing a brand or that we're representing a client, we have to follow the rules of that certain brand if there is a brand. But I mean, of course, the less rules, the better, so we can really get creative with what we really advertise. And so far, no problems have arisen. We've never been fined for any ethical or legal issues out of the matter, but we just got to make sure that we really follow that policy very closely.
Okay, was there ever any censorships when you guys would do your ads? Is there any form of like censorship and why you guys do it? Or?
That's a good question. I can't really think of any ads that we've ran into that we've had to censor. For example, on Facebook and on our websites for Harley Davidson, bikers tend to curse a lot. So sometimes we'll go ahead and just delete comments that have a lot of profanity. Some advertisements, people reply with profanity because they're either upset or they think that it's cool to just, curse. So sometimes we'll censor our Facebook page and our website just to make sure that, it keeps a certain level of professionalism. But most of the time, we've never run into any censorship problems when it comes to advertisements.
How has the ethical views of the professionals in your business changed over the years?
I would say the Harley Davidson brand, it's a little more laid back. So our dealership, for example, they all still manage to be very laid back but very professional at the same time. Of course, they keep their customer service as their utmost priority, so treating their customers with respect and just with loyalty overall. It's something that they find that's very important. So we've never really come up across any ethical issues we really got to follow other than, the typical moral issues that, of course not having some things too raunchy, for example. When we have our events, we just got to make sure that they don't get carried out of line. And if somebody's representing the dealership, to just, make sure that you keep them in line as well.
Okay, how do you feel your ethical and legal challenges that you faced, how do you feel that they've been changing in the industry?
That's a good question as well. Lately, it's the talk of freedom of expression and freedom of speech has been very, very broad when it comes to people's opinions. The reason that is because people are becoming more aware of the way our government works, so they think that they can say whatever they want and do whatever they want, which is correct. Our laws, especially the freedom of expression and freedom of speech, only apply to the government and ourselves. So the way those laws work is we can only use them when our government is trying to silence us or when our government is trying to censor us. But when it comes to me telling, you to be quiet, to, shut up, then that's totally doable because we're not government entities. So we can't really say, but I have freedom of expression. It's like, no, okay, if somebody tells you to be quiet or to not express yourself the way you are, you kind of have to, follow that rule. But when it comes to our businesses, we've never really had to change the way that we do things. Personally, I think that there has to be a separation of your personal life and your work life. When it comes to, if you're doing your job correctly, you should pretty much leave your opinions at the door. Especially in the mass communication field, it's really important that if we do have an opinion on a certain subject, that we don't use it to cloud our judgment or to cloud our opinions, because at the end of the day, you are working for an entity. It's really important to just make sure that you are following the beliefs and the system that entity works for. For example, the Chick-fil-A kind of pandemonium that happened a couple of years ago, where the owner stated his opinion on same-sex marriage. A lot of people were very upset by that, but at the same time, he didn't say that is what the whole company believes in. Those are his personal beliefs. So of course, he's the owner and the founder of Chick-fil-A. So a lot of people found that to be something that's very upsetting. So a lot of people protested, or they stopped eating at Chick-fil-A, or a lot of people ended up eating at Chick-fil-A to make him really upset. But at the end of the day, Chick-fil-A is one of the companies that has one of the very, very best Christian values to themselves. So they believe in, the good old Christian values like friendliness and just being polite. And of course, they don't discriminate against any gay people. They hire many gay employees. So at the same time, when people were very upset, they were more upset about his opinion, even though the company itself is a completely different, thing other than his opinion. So at the same time, as mass communication majors, we should really take into consideration how we look at ourselves and our views and the way that we're going to work in the future.
Very good. Okay, for this next question, I'm a sucker for social media. I have almost every social account.
It's my life.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing I do. You'll see me on my phone all the time. Do you have any social media accounts?
I have pretty much every single media platform you can think of. For one, my job pretty much revolves around digital media all the time. So I'm pretty well acquainted with every social media out there.
Okay, so going into the question, how has social media and the opinion of bloggers changed the way your information is delivered?
Many of the times, people see information online regarding any news articles or any kind of issue with any brand or company. So it's very disturbing to see how strong of a following bloggers have when in reality they're not even actual legitimate news outlets. So for example, when there's recalls for either vehicles or food or medicine items, people who blog tend to have an opinion or tend to see certain scenarios that are isolated. So for a brand, it's kind of like the enemy. Social media is a double-edged sword nowadays, where you can get really good feedback on a product or really horrible feedback on a product. Sometimes it even backfires and you launch a social media campaign for a brand and it completely backfires and the customers don't like it, or your brand already has a questionable reputation, so it doesn't help your situation. So I think if you tactfully use social media, depending on the kind of demographic you want to reach out to, you can be very successful. For example, Harley Davidson doesn't have a huge following on Twitter because a lot of the bikers and a lot of people who are riding motorcycles nowadays tend to be more active on Facebook and Instagram than Twitter. Twitter tends to be for the younger audiences. So for any brands that younger people tend to follow, it's a very smart idea to stay on Twitter. But when it comes to other brands like Coca-Cola, for example, everybody knows Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is the second most or best known word in the entire world. The first word is okay. So Coca-Cola is pretty much the second most well-known word in the entire industry. So the fact that it's on every social network, it pretty much works to its advantage because nobody really questions Coke. Everybody loves to drink Coke. So that's pretty much I think the only opinion that I would have about social media is just be very careful with it and be very strategic with how you work.
Well, that's the last of our questions. Thank you so much, Humberto, for helping us out. This has been Robert and our camerawoman, Celine.